Ooh, you're seeing some magic right now.
Yeah.
All right. Today, we welcome in pastry chef Butch Jones, who shows us how to win over almost any crowd with his tasty autumnal turnovers.
And things take a turn for the worse in South Florida as Miami fans are forced to watch. Oh, come on! Who let them in here?
They must have taken the red eye.
This sucks.
Oh, man.
All right.
It's time to wake up, college football.
Where did you even get all that from?
Ain't a live show fun?
Look at this. Look at this. We have my cards.
Can you pick it
everywhere.
up? Can you?
No, we're just gonna go with it.
We should
just gonna
attempt
go
to pick
with
it
it.
up. Okay, so welcome to Week 6 Wake Up College Football. Inappropriate fashion, the show has been a bit of a mess thus far, like a literal mess.
Like a literal mess. I mean, I can try to.
You can.
We can try to get.
Let's get
some- Nah, screw
you
it.
chained
Screw
it.
it. Yeah.
Oh, it's great. Okay, so this works really well for me. So Florida's game, your alma mater, gets
Didn't play.
gets
Didn't-
stormed out.
I like that we're going to start by leading off with the game that didn't even
Start with that.
happen. Great.
Oregon's game was a total mess for me as an Oregon fan,
Sure.
but a wonderful day, I'm sure, for Washington fans
Rutgers
everywhere.
also didn't play this
Rutgers
weekend.
did not play.
So-
No.
Where do you want to start?
Okay, I want to start with this. I want to
Yeah.
start with the game between two of the most defensible playoff contenders, and that would be
Texas, Oklahoma.
Texas,
No.
Oklahoma.
I assume,
Let's start with Texas A&M, Tennessee.
Okay,
What
yeah.
did you think I was going to say?
I assume that was.
Oh,
what you
okay.
wanted to
Two
do.
undefeated
it was more
teams
fun to
in the
say Texas,
SEC.
Oklahoma. Yeah.
So a school record, I believe, 7 turnovers for Tennessee, and it almost didn't matter.
Yeah, setting school records turns out not to be a great thing
Right.
sometimes. Yeah, it's interesting because my first impression of this game was, wow, A&M really didn't do anything with the turnovers. That
Right.
I think they only scored 14, 17 points, something like that, off of
Yes.
those 7 turnovers. But something like 4 of them came within the A&M 40. So it's one of those games where no, Texas A&M didn't use those turnovers to score points on their own.
Right.
But they did a great job of keeping Tennessee from scoring points on them, and that I think was the important thing. But you're right. In the end, Tennessee storms back, sends this game to overtime, and ends it on the last turnover. So there's
Yeah.
but Tennessee just they can't keep. I think they've learned they can't keep playing with fire.
Yep.
And also, Texas A&M's running game is for real. Even if you
Yes.
take out the 2 late long runs they had in the
And
game.
the punch out, yeah.
Yes, they still did work on the ground against the Volunteers.
Yeah.
Tennessee also a really beat up team right now,
Yes.
which is I think what's really impressive to me about the fact that they were able to keep the Magic going this far.
Right.
Is just the fact that they did it with everybody beat up, especially on defense, and still managed to hang around. I still think they are the team to beat in the
East, sure.
especially if they can start getting some of those guys healthy down the line.
This season, with Tennessee's injuries, has been a referendum on the secret sauce of recruiting, not
Yes.
being like, we're going to have these amazing starters who are going to torch everybody.
Right.
It's everybody's going to get beat up, and the drop-off between our amazing blue-chip starter to our amazing blue-chip second or third stringer isn't all that
Yeah,
drastic.
talk to UCLA last year
Yes.
if you want to know how
Talk
good
to
it is.
UCLA
to not
last
have it.
night about their
Well,
backup
there's also
quarterback.
that, yeah.
And Texas A&M wise, we saw some of the things that haunted that defense last year,
Yes.
which was the ground game. John
Yep.
Chavis his defense have struggled on the ground, I would say, these past couple seasons, which is uncharacteristic. But the fact that Texas A&M was able, with a very clearly hobbled Myles Garrett, to make some plays, turn over Tennessee, take advantage of opportunities, and you're right, what they were able to do on the ground. And, there's good Trevor Knight and bad Trevor Knight,
Yeah.
but I think he overcame himself enough to the point where he showed himself to be enough of a warrior that in a late, close game, it's not automatic panic about Trevor Knight.
Sure.
I think if you're a Texas A&M fan, you're encouraged by Trevor Knight's fourth quarter and overtime.
I think that's probably the fair. I think the problem is Texas A&M fans probably want people to think that Trevor Knight is the greatest thing since sliced
Right.
bread. And he's not, but it doesn't have to be.
For what they're
because
trying to do,
If
yeah.
their defense can get enough pressure on passers, and if they can run the ball as well as they've been doing, and if they don't have special teams screw-ups, which they did with that field goal at the end of regulation,
Yep.
which was nowhere near close,
Whoa, weird.
then I feel pretty good about this A&M team.
Right.
Can they beat Alabama, which is kind of the ultimate question if you're in the SEC West? I don't know, but I think they can at least. I think they can give them a more interesting game than Arkansas did.
I think so. I think that's right. But you better shore up that run defense real quickly because Damian Harris runs angry. So I think you're right in saying Tennessee is still the favorite in the East.
Yeah.
A&M is in a good place, and we'll move up. A&M got over the sixth game hurdle, which has sort of eluded them.
Sure.
Yeah. So encouraging going into the back half of the season.
Staying in the state of Texas.
Let's do. I was going to go there as well.
Yeah. I mean, Texas, you have no defense.
Yeah. And speaking of surviving turnovers,
I believe they gave up 9 plays of 20-plus yards against Oklahoma. Oklahoma talk about setting school records. Oklahoma's setting school records at the receiver position, in this rivalry at the quarterback. Like
total yardage,
whatever. Vance Bedford has to be feeling pretty good because he gets to be like, oh, I guess it wasn't
me.
Oh, it wasn't my decisions?
Right.
That's weird. Totally weird. Totally weird that our defense that can't stop anybody and is now giving up. This is the 3rd straight game Texas gave up at least 500 yards and at least 45 points.
Yeah.
And you can't, there are so few teams in college football that you can beat when you do that because you're basically saying, hey, is your defense shittier than ours? No? Well, okay, we're screwed.
And the thing that has to hurt, particularly, I don't want to harp on Texas because they feel bad.
Yeah.
They really do feel. If you're a Texas fan,
you should.
They had opportunities.
Yeah.
They had a number of opportunities. Oklahoma, for all of the yardage they put up, Joe Mixon had an atrocious game.
Yes.
Protecting the ball, keeping drives going, and thank God for Samaje Perine.
Right.
You know, we hadn't seen him in the same way that he had been playing the last couple years, but. Man, Oklahoma, they finally get a healthy D.D. Westbrook, and we saw the difference that made.
Very healthy.
Very healthy. I forget, he had 230 some odd receiving yards.
Individual school record for a single game.
It is hard to. It's encouraging for Oklahoma after the start that they had, losing to 2 very good teams. We don't know what Houston and their future lies at this moment, but losing to. Losing Ohio State is never going to be great, but the way that they've bounced back with the win over TCU, now surviving Texas, surviving the turnovers, is impressive.
Surviving feels generous. I got to be honest. It didn't. I mean, Texas did some good things in this game, but there were no consistent points where I was like, "Oh, this is getting out of." Like Oklahoma is letting this slip away.
I think the turnovers, even on the game-winning drive.
Yeah, I hear you, but just because they were capable of.
So maybe they survived themselves.
Oklahoma had averaged 10 yards worse field position than Texas. They were not consistently starting at their own 40 at midfield, and they just drove and drove and drove and drove. So there was no point where you were like, ooh, boy, I hope Oklahoma can put a drive together. They can definitely put a drive together. It's the Texas defense.
Right. Is there anybody that you feel at this point now that they've beaten Texas and TCU? I mean, Baylor's the only real...
Yeah, Baylor and West Virginia are still undefeated at this point, so you have to give them some credit.
Kansas State beat Texas.
Oklahoma State is the team I am super confused because they did the Baylor thing and they needed a big fourth quarter comeback to beat Iowa State, but Oklahoma State I think has shown enough on both sides of the ball at times that you sort of say Bedlam could be interesting, and it's Bedlam because and that game doesn't have to make sense.
Right, that is very true. Okay, let's jump around a little bit. Let's go to a top 5 team that looked the part. And we are on the Washington campus.
Oh, boy.
Obviously, we are live from the Washington campus.
We won't let you take this one.
Let Dan take the wheel. So Washington ended a 12-year unbeaten streak.
Yeah.
Or beaten streak. A 12-year beaten streak against the Oregon Ducks. Oregon looks like a mess. The seat under which Mark Helfrich is sitting is extremely hot right now. Washington dropped 70 in this rivalry game. 70 points on the road in a difficult place to play.
The school record Oregon's ever allowed is 71.
In like 1941.
And I was kind of disappointed that Washington didn't just go for a field goal to break that.
And I will put this out there right now.
Yeah.
I love when teams run up the score. And I love that Washington ran up the score. Oregon's job is to stop them.
Yep.
They got each of their cheeks kicked in.
You did a bad job.
You did a very bad job, Oregon.
The flip side is, so the Pac12 North, the balance of power has just totally gone out the window at this point because Stanford, who was still number 15 as of yesterday, that will not be true by the time you watch this video in all likelihood, got trounced.
Yes, they did.
Got, again, Christian McCaffrey basically
total non-factor,
The offense continues to sputter. The defense is not good enough to stop high-powered offenses at this point.
And withstand injuries.
Yes,
We talked about
yes.
the secret
Oh,
sauce
yeah,
of recruiting.
absolutely.
They
Yeah.
cannot withstand too many injuries. Their depth isn't there yet.
And now we get to talk about playoff implication Apple Cup,
I love this.
which, boy.
Is
that's just-
Wazoo? No, Wazoo lost to Boise State. I was going to say, they're still Power 5 undefeated. Wazoo is Power 5 undefeated. No, Wazoo was very, very good. Their defense, and that's the other thing, too. We can talk about how Wazoo is now outrunning Oregon and Stanford. Defensively, I don't know if a team has given up fewer points than Wazoo in the Pac-12 right
Weird.
now.
Very weird.
It's such a weird world we live in.
And to make the Pac-12 North even weirder,
Yeah.
Cal, coming off a great win against Utah, loses to Oregon State.
Yes.
And Oregon State ran all over
overtime,
Cal. Like,
yeah.
nothing makes sense in the Pac-12 North anymore.
Even the South, it doesn't make a ton
but we're
of sense.
kind of
Yes.
used to the South not making
True.
sense. The North has always been sort of like, this is steady, and you
Yes.
sort of like know who's who. The South has always been for the last couple years at least, a complete like, oh, are you doing well? Well, this team's going to come along and ruin
Yes.
next season.
And that's
Colorado
always Utah, but yeah.
loses to you. Let's talk about USC just for a second.
Sure.
Do you feel good about where they are as a team and where Clay Helton is as a coach right now, bouncing back the last couple weeks? Especially, I mean,
Okay.
Colorado, if we are to believe that Colorado was deserving of its ranking, and I think they
At the
were,
very least, pretty good.
I think they were. We have to be somewhat impressed by what USC was able to do against them.
Yeah, Clay Helton is yet to lose at home.
Yep.
They pull out away. The offense wasn't great.
No.
Sam Darnold was sloppy with the ball. The offense in general was sloppy. I like that he found, I think his name is Tyler Pettit, the tight end, a couple times in big spots. Dory Jackson has a huge interception.
Oh boy, was that interception great.
Ridiculous interception.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel at a certain point, you judge a team as talented as USC is,
Right.
not necessarily by what they do, but somewhat by what they leave on the field.
Right.
And they left so much on the field,
Okay,
and
that's
they
fair.
did not take advantage of Colorado mistakes, and Colorado's offense was nothing in that
Yeah.
first half. And USC had the opportunities to put the pedal to the metal, as they say, and they did not.
How old are you?
As
What
they
is this?
say.
Are you seducing me? This is terrible.
I'm on very little
Shut
sleep.
up. You don't know.
I'm on
You
very
don't know what
little
little sleep is. But-
So I was disappointed by USC, but
Right.
it's encouraging that they were able to withstand their own mess and beat Colorado.
Okay, so it's interesting that you talk about not being able to sort of step on the other team's
Yes.
neck. That was kind of a problem with Texas A&M, although it ended up working out fine. It was definitely a problem for Miami.
Yes, it was.
Miami, Florida State.
As the trash has gathered.
yeah,
around you.
First of all, can't say enough good things about what Miami Florida State rather, was able to do on defense in
Yes.
this game. Holds Miami to under 2.5 yards per carry, makes Brad Kaya look basically useless in the second half. He does get that touchdown
Yes,
for them, but
Coley, yeah.
but by and large, really was ineffective for most of the third and fourth quarter. Florida State.
And shut down Miami on the ground as well.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
That was the
yeah.
huge thing, too, because those two backs have been very good this year.
And I will say, I do think Miami's defense played reasonably well in this game. I think
Yes.
if you hold Florida State to 20 points, I think if you can sort of weather the storm, they weathered the storm pretty well, especially in the first half. They were just in the backfield all the time. They were putting a lot of hits on DeAndre Francois, many of them after the legal window, but that's fine.
And Corn Elder, by the way, just lights out. Such a good corner. Yeah.
But boy, this was one of the most deflating losses. I mean, not just because it
Yeah.
happened with the missed extra point, the blocked extra point. That obviously sucks. And at some point, somebody needs to figure out what's going on with extra points in college football this year.
Very strange year.
They're not going great.
Texas, Miami.
What does this mean? What does this mean about the ACC as a whole right now? Like, what does that pecking order look like?
Well, I suppose we should also mention what Virginia Tech did to North Carolina when we talk about ACC pecking order. So I would throw Virginia Tech in there right under Louisville and Clemson.
Right.
I would at this point.
Yes, you have to.
Because transitive-wise, which means very little.
Very, very little.
But after North Carolina beats Florida State and then in turn gets shellacked in the rain. It is very difficult to score points in the rain. I don't know if we'll have time to get to Notre Dame because we're just talking about relevant teams.
It feels oh God.
Do you want to talk about that game?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
I mostly appreciate that Notre Dame just, no, you know what? I changed my mind. I don't want to talk about this game. Yeah.
So, but yeah, pecking order-wise, Virginia Tech slides there right under Clemson and Louisville, which is not something we anticipated, I think, early on in the season.
Yep.
And North Carolina doesn't just lose in okay fashion.
Yeah.
They lose in spectacular fashion both times this season. But as it relates to Florida State, I think Florida State's below, I think it would probably go Clemson, Louisville, Virginia Tech, I guess.
/ Florida State, maybe, at that point?
Yeah, Virginia Tech / Florida State.
Yeah.
But how do you put Florida State above North Carolina? I don't know. I don't know how that works. And then
Wheel of
Miami.
Destiny continues. Yeah.
And then 77,000 spots later, Boston College.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Boston. But I do want to make some time for
Yes.
the worst Power 5 game
Yeah.
of the weekend.
Oh, man. We should have worn black. We really.
Rutgers. What the hell, dude? We often talk about Boston College is a great example of this.
Yeah.
The teams that we're sort of like tracking, are you going to get more punts than pass completions on the season? Rutgers had almost as many punts as pass attempts against Michigan. Rutgers finished with, I believe, 15 punts.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Almost doesn't get a first down. Maybe the most tragic part of this game was at one point Rutgers gets what looks like a pick six, reversed rightly on replay.
Yeah.
78. This is a score that you're looking at it and you're like, oh well, somebody hit a 3 instead of a 7 instead of a 3.
Right.
Surely it wasn't 78. Rutgers, not that long ago, was a team that was beating Arkansas, was beating Washington State, was beating Michigan.
Yeah.
And now they are arguably the worst team in the Power 5.
Yeah.
I can't think of a Power 5 team that I would say with confidence Rutgers can beat that team. Can you?
I don't think so.
Look, Purdue, Illinois are two teams that I don't feel great about,
I
but
guess,
they at least show something.
Right, I was going to say, you mentioned Boston College.
Yeah.
Boston College, unless they're playing a team like Clemson,
Right.
they play very nice defense.
Right.
If not really good defense
Right.
at times. Rutgers is a team, they're like the Office Space Bob's team. What is it that you...
What is it that you do?
That you do, exactly. Because they haven't scored a point in 2 weeks now.
Correct.
And it's a first-year coach.
They are playing Illinois next week, though, so I think if that's... Let me put it this way. If they go for a third straight week,
Yeah.
kick them out of the Big Ten. They're done.
What do you add? What are you giving us? Yeah. And Michigan took out all of its starters pretty early on.
Yep.
They started John O'Korn in the second half.
Did not ease off the throttle whatsoever.
They did not. And you know why that is, though. There is more to this than just Michigan being dominant.
Oh, Jim Harbaugh's a psychopath.
Jim Harbaugh is a psychopath. I mean, Chris Ash is an Ohio State guy, and there's something to that. But I think the big reason is Michigan is trying to build a fence around New Jersey for recruiting purposes.
Yeah, and Rutgers had plenty of recruits at this game.
Yes.
For some reason. Great call.
Yeah, well, Oregon had a lot at their game. It happens.
We don't make mistakes.
So, yes, I think that's the case. I think it is a big show-me thing for Michigan recruiting because New Jersey is a nicely stocked state, but we should move around the country a little bit more. There were a number of games that were
Biggest upset of the weekend.
Probably Navy.
Yeah.
Navy Houston.
Navy beating Houston. Confusing about this game, Houston didn't punt once. Every Houston possession ended in either points for Houston, points for Navy, good job safety, or a turnover.
Yeah.
And they lose that turnover battle 3-0.
Yeah.
They get gashed on the ground. I think the most immediate question is, does this end Houston's playoff aspirations? And I think the answer probably has to be yes.
I think the answer is probably yes. There is a very slim chance if they run the table and just blow the doors off of Louisville that that momentum.
Even that, I mean, the fact that if we were talking about undefeated Louisville,
right.
I think that would have a lot more water at this point.
Yeah, I think it's much more of a momentum into a New Year's Bowl for Houston at this point.
And it's a shame because Houston's still, I think, a very good team, but one that second week in a row did not force any turnovers on defense.
They didn't force turnovers,
problematic.
And they forced a lot of turnovers on offense.
Yeah, they did do that.
Greg Ward threw a couple picks, fumbled it a couple times. And the big thing for Houston, this is something we've seen from other teams that run similar, if not identical systems, is it's great when you have a quarterback making big plays with his arm, but if you're unable to run the ball, no matter who you are and no matter how well you throw it, this is what we've seen from Baylor in years past, what we've seen from Washington State, Texas Tech, if you're unable to run the ball and control clock a little bit, and granted, Houston's running game is beat up, but they were not able to move the ball on the ground.
Right.
And on the road, in a strange, rainy place like Annapolis, playing against an offense that controls the ball as much as Navy can do. And
they had something like a 12-play, 8-minute drive in the fourth quarter. Didn't score points, but just chewed up so much clock.
It bleeds you. And the fact that, and Navy's a good team.
Yeah,
they've started the year out nicely. It's a new quarterback. I think the line was 3 of 5 for 2 touchdowns.
Yeah,
the quarterback's line, Will Worth.
Whatever.
Yes, that is the disheartening thing if you're Houston, that you couldn't stop the run, and that's always tough in a week's time to build a defense to stop that attack, but also that you yourselves, against a Navy defense that looked good and disciplined, but Houston, with playoff aspirations and as a top 10 team, should still be able to run the ball against that team, and they just weren't.
Yeah.
Weren't able to.
Ohio State, Indiana.
Yes.
I know you have some thoughts on this game.
Indiana, secretly decent defense. I know I used that phrase.
Not even secret. Urban Meyer came out and said this is the best defense Ohio State's played all year, I believe.
Yes, and they've played Oklahoma. They've played Rutgers.
Okay, well,
that was mean. I don't know why we're...
This went downhill quickly.
Indiana, it's Tom Allen, I believe, runs their defense, and they did a wonderful job against a very dangerous Ohio State offense. They forced J.T. Barrett into a very inefficient day, and it was windy on the field. The conditions weren't great, but, I mean, J.T. Barrett ran the ball 26 times, I think, something like that. A number that I'm not thrilled with if I'm an Ohio State fan. I mean, he's great. Mike Weber was really good. But Indiana specifically, I think they gave up 2 very, very short touchdown drives, like a 2-yard drive and a 5-yard drive because of special teams and turnovers. So what they were able to do against this team on the road, I think speaks volumes about Indiana moving forward, because they should be able to move the ball against just about everybody else on their schedule. And Ohio State they start off slow again. They're able to get into a bit of a rhythm, but they just were not able to sort of enforce and inflict their will upon Indiana like other teams, which I think is a great thing for Indiana.
Right. Just jumping around some other things that stood out to me. Michigan State continues to just... And Mark D'Antonio was very upfront about it. He said, the climb to the top can be long and hard and arduous, and the fall can be quick, man. I mean, Michigan State, I think, based on past precedent, is a team that I have confidence can get this fixed.
Yes.
Within the context of this season and still pull out something respectable.
Yeah.
But the clock is ticking pretty quickly here, especially because this is a team that hasn't played Michigan or Ohio State yet. And as of now, you just have to look at those matchups and say, well, those are 2 guaranteed losses, and probably not close ones at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it illustrates, because I think we can also agree Mark D'Antonio is an excellent coach. What they've done with quarterbacks and recruiting and fitting players into that defense has been nonstop impressive. But as you mentioned, the decline can come quickly and without warning, and it is just so hard. And these are the moments where I'm just like, man, Urban Meyer and Nick Saban are just psychopaths to maintain that level. We're seeing Jim Harbaugh climb. We're seeing Jimbo Fisher generally stay atop. We're seeing Dabo generally staying atop. But with Michigan State and the margin for error that they have, it's just so tough to stay a 10-win team in a tough conference like the Big Ten. And, I mean, look at Iowa. They needed a last-second touchdown to score 14 points against Minnesota.
Yeah,
coming off
and
of
needed
a Rose
to hold
Bowl
off
season.
and needed to hold off Minnesota at the end of that game as well.
Yes, and they needed to hold off Minnesota. So
there were a handful of games. I mean, TCU barely beating Kansas.
Yep.
That's not ideal. There are a lot of sort of recent powers that are sort of just between Stanford, TCU, Michigan State, Iowa.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
Oregon.
teams that are sort of, there is definitely an element of things are being turned on there. These teams that you sort of thought, okay, they're climbing, climbing, they're going to sort of take their seat with college football's traditional powers.
Right.
Although Texas arguably was one of those powers, and they don't look great either. So, hey.
They do not at all.
Congratulations.
Elsewhere, Kansas State held on against Texas Tech.
Yep.
And I think they simplified their offense nicely. And Texas Tech, Patrick Mahomes played. He hurt himself against Kansas a little while ago, so a nice win for Kansas State. You mentioned the Oklahoma State thing. The Pac-12 South, UCLA gave away a game to Arizona State. I mean, look, Arizona State has played the run very well this year. UCLA continues to struggle to run the ball. Josh Rosen got shelled in this game. UCLA brings in their backup quarterback. he is not
Doesn't
ready.
go great.
He's not ready for that stage. He keeps turning the ball over. Arizona does not get past Utah. Utah gets over that hump. They've struggled with Arizona in years past, and it was an ugly game, especially a sloppy first half, but good for Utah bouncing back like
The
they
Pac-12
have.
South right now is basically the end of Reservoir Dogs, where it's like, all right, we're all just going to kill each other.
We're all
right?
just-
And one person will, I guess, be alive at the end of
Right.
it, but barely.
Yes.
He's still very badly bleeding.
Right. So there are Clemson.
And gets smashed by Washington probably in the Pac-12 championship game.
I mentioned the Washington-Oregon game in terms of like Oregon getting killed. Let's talk about Washington very briefly, and then we're going to take questions momentarily.
Yeah.
Jake Browning, there is a pretty clear argument just as a thrower, because Lamar Jackson remains the most talented and productive general player at playing quarterback.
Sure. Deshaun Watson is probably in that conversation.
Deshaun Watson's had a couple down games, but at his peak, yes.
Yeah.
But in terms of production
Or
this
Baker
year,
Mayfield,
or
really.
Baker Mayfield, I'm willing to
Right.
entertain all of
Yeah,
these.
yeah.
But in terms of sheer production, yards per attempt, quarterback rating in the red zone, whatever, Jake Browning's having the best season of any quarterback in the country, and that includes games over Stanford and Oregon at this point.
Yeah.
So it should be recognized that Jake Browning, in earnest.
Although we're going to get to the end of the season and be like, well, look, he did that against 2 unranked teams.
Right. I mean,
One of which didn't make a bowl game.
he only accounted for 8 touchdowns against Oregon. This Oregon team? Jake Browning, in earnest, should start entering Heisman conversations.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's averaging like 11 yards per attempt against
Okay.
FBS schools.
Okay.
I mean, he's been completely lights out.
I don't have a good argument against it at this point.
In every phase, Washington destroyed
I'm
Oregon.
going to put you on the spot real quick.
Please.
You don't have the schedule in front of you, so this isn't entirely fair.
All right, I can pull it up.
This is kind of a solid verbal themed question.
Okay.
Which team makes a bowl this season? Oregon, Notre Dame, or neither? I'm not going to say both because I don't feel like both of them are.
Let's look up. No, I know generally Oregon's schedule, and it's not looking great, and it's not that tough.
Right.
Like moving forward.
Right.
it's-
Although the Oregon State was the one game I was like, Oregon will definitely win that game. Now that Oregon State can run the ball, I was like, Oregon will probably win that
Oregon
game.
State scored like 30 points against Oregon in the second half last year. I'm going to look this up.
Oh,
yeah.
Mark Helfrich, what have you
I would
done?
put Notre Dame,
Yeah.
even losing a game without allowing an offensive touchdown,
Mm-hmm.
I would probably still put them as more likely because at least they've made a change and perhaps new ideas are going to flow through the administrative offices. Okay. The schedule is slow to load. Here we go. Notre Dame's schedule
I
moving
feel like
forward.
what Oregon has done is Chip Kelly was the pit master, and they sort of were like, well, he's retiring now. Hey, you, the guy who makes the coleslaw, you can take over, right? And he's like, yeah, definitely. I definitely won't burn this restaurant down.
I've been watching.
Oh, yeah. Smoke and heat. And, yeah, all of that. Let's do that. Oh, God.
Notre Dame has Stanford this coming week at home.
Which, God, what an ugly, stupid game that will be to watch.
That will be ugly and stupid. They have Miami at home.
Okay.
I mean, they're certainly outclassed by Miami at this point. They have Navy and Army on neutral sites.
Navy looks really good right now. Army has shown flashes. Wake Forest continues to
5-1
climb towards bowl eligibility.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they have Virginia Tech, who looks demonstrably better than Notre Dame, and they finish at USC.
Who's also turning it around.
So of those 6 games, if we can,
And they got to win 4 of those.
they have to win 4. They're 2-4, as is Oregon.
Yeah.
So of those 4 games, I mean, service academies, USC, and Stanford.
Sure.
I don't think they win 4.
I don't feel great about it.
I think they win 3. I think Oregon maximum wins 2 of the remaining 6.
Okay. Follow-up question.
Yeah.
So you're going with neither Oregon nor Notre Dame.
I think Notre Dame has a really good quarterback,
Right.
so I would give them the edge.
Sure. I
would
think that's
say
fair.
I would say Notre Dame has a 53% chance of going to a bowl game. I would say Oregon has a 31.
Okay. Which team will have the same head coach next year? Oregon, Notre Dame, or neither? Or both. I'll give you both for this one as well.
I think Notre Dame is more likely to have the same head coach.
Okay.
They've still recruited pretty well. I think he has earned the opportunity. I don't think he's going to be let go in the way that I don't think they have careened to the levels that Oregon has. I don't think they have. Do you think they have?
I mean, they lost to Duke.
Lost to Duke.
They lost to NC State.
Yeah.
They are arguably, if Notre Dame moved to North Carolina, they would arguably be the worst FBS team in the state?
ECU's pretty bad.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. They'd be the second to worst.
Okay,
FBS
let's look up some questions. Keep asking questions if you have any.
Except if you have questions about the front of the show, we don't have answers.
I don't
wanna
have
make
an
that
answer for that.
perfectly clear.
Yes. So I'm trying to think if did we leave anybody out that is worth talking about?
You know what? Let's talk about, just for fun, let's talk about the Florida LSU, whatever that's happening. We should note, we're filming this before South Carolina, Georgia, which got rescheduled for today. Although, you don't have to watch that game.
No,
you can do anything
nobody's
else.
forcing you.
Although I hope NFL ratings go down a little bit more this week. And everybody says, well, it's because the dogs and the cocks were playing. How can you miss that? Clash of the Titans.
Florida LSU.
Florida LSU. Here's my take on it. Both teams, both programs care about their money.
Yes.
Florida did not want to give up home game revenue. LSU also, in terms of the South Alabama game, does not want to give up home game revenue / have to buy out, which I think the buyout there was going to be like $1 million, $1.5 million or something.
I think it was closer to 2, yeah.
I think they should just get over it and fix it.
Yeah.
I think Florida handled it poorly. I think the SEC handled it poorest of all.
Yeah.
Because they're the adult in the room. They're supposed to say, hey, this is what you are going to do. Florida, I would put second on that list. And LSU probably third. I don't think it is very funny to me that the SEC will come out and say, like, we're in discussions about playing this game on the 19th.
Right.
And LSU will be like, nobody's talked to us about that. And I really enjoy how publicly this is all playing out. I also think it's not going to matter at all. I don't look at LSU or Florida and be like, oh, well, those teams are on a collision course.
I don't look at either one realistically, but right in here, LSU and Ed Orgeron.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's and I do want to talk about one other SEC West team before we get to questions.
Okay. Who?
Auburn.
Yeah.
Auburn has kind of fixed things.
Yes.
I mean, Mississippi State is understandably in a state of disarray right now.
Yes.
But if Auburn can sort of build confidence from that, Auburn will be the Tigers will be a very interesting team to watch as the season goes on. For one of those teams, it's like, oh, you're going to screw up somebody else's season. And at the very least, Gus Malzahn's hot seat is basically at room temperature.
Yeah, and on an even more granular level, Shaun White has looked good. He's taken some time to thaw.
Yep.
But he looks good.
Yep. All right. What do you got?
Bigger playoff implications: Apple Cup or Nebraska versus Wisconsin?
Oh boy.
I think it's Apple Cup.
Well, so the problem is this: Apple Cup right now only has implications insofar as Washington. Washington State is not making the playoff. Is that fair?
That's fair.
At this point?
They've lost to an FCS.
They've lost to an FCS team, and they've lost to a Group of 5 team.
Yeah.
You can't do both of those things, two things, and make the playoff. Nebraska-Wisconsin still has the potential to be the game that gets one team into the playoff, or at least puts one team on track to get there. Wisconsin is still not at the point where they're out of contention altogether. Nebraska's definitely not there. I guess I would weirdly go with that game, although in the end I think Washington needs that win. That's the biggest hurdle left on the schedule for Washington, whereas Nebraska and Wisconsin, there's still some other stuff.
There's still some hurdles. You beat Michigan and Ohio State, you're in a good place, even though Wisconsin's already lost. Not too many other questions specifically.
Just mean comments?
Just a lot of mean comments. Alabama's just too good. Yes, Alabama looked great against Arkansas.
I mean, the truth of that game is that game got out of hand so quickly that everybody was just like, don't bother.
Right.
Don't bother watching it. And that's true. Alabama right now looks good enough to keep being Alabama. I wish I had a more insightful opinion than that.
Yes, and Arkansas, surprisingly enough, line play has been on both sides, has been an issue. They just, even in the back of Arkansas's defense, they don't have the horses right now to compete to, at least, my stomach is grumbling. Are you hearing that from here? They don't have the horses to compete. All right, let's end the show. Thank you, everybody, for watching. A bit of a weird one, but listen, they're all weird in their own way. They're all a little bit strange.
They're all our weird children.
Like the post, like the video, share the video, do whatever you got to do. Listen to the Shutdown Fullcast, listen to the Solid Verbal, listen to podcasts, Ain't Played Nobody, all terrific podcasts on the SB Nation podcast.
Don't watch Georgia, South Carolina. Nobody's forced
I don't think you have to.
Just read about it later.
If you are a fan of a team,
olden times, when you didn't have a TV or a radio, and you just had to wait for the newspaper to be like, oh, look at that.
So
Georgia 18, South Carolina 11.
Give people something.
What a whooping.
If either they lost a rivalry game in an ugly fashion yesterday, or just a game in an ugly fashion yesterday, and they live in a place that it might be nice outside, give them an activity to do instead of watching Georgia,
So I
South
think
Carolina.
it's probably, if you live somewhere where it's still nice enough to go for a swim, I would say go do that, because your time is ticking.
Yep.
And even if it's a cold, just like a brief cold dip,
refreshing.
Just do that. It really gets the blood flowing. It's good for you.
All right.
And that's also very much like what we did in the times before TV and radio. We we're like, let's go for a cold plunge.
Let's move our bodies in water.
I think this is the year Mark Richt takes the Bulldogs all the way.
All right, this is completely off the rails. Thank you for watching. It's always a good time. We're live from the University of Washington campus.
Notre Dame and Rutgers have the same record. That's all I got.
Yeah, that's all we need to have. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.